If you are interested in any of our products, please get in touch by Facebook or Shopify for international sales. Look up for links in the description below. Welcome again, this is the final video. Here I will show you how to detail the figure with fine brushes, as well as other techniques like dry brush, glazing and washes, so you can get a great looking statue when finished. To detail the figure further, I started with dark brown to repaint the clothing seams, zippers and the straps as well. I used acrylics for this brushwork, although I mostly prefer using enamels instead, as they flow better with the small brushes. I used the same chrome paint as before to add details to the buckles, the back zipper and the boot zippers as well. When using fast drying paint like this, I put quite a bit in a deposit or jar, since it starts drying as soon as it has air contact, and I notice when it's locked down in the brush. I applied the first wash done with oil paint and turpentine, with a medium brush that holds as much paint as possible, usually watercolor brushes. A wash is a very thin coat of paint that is cleaned up after the paint has dried. This leaves some paint in the recesses of the sculpt. The deeper, the more paint it will leave. You can use diluted paints such as oils or dyes, which are also transparent. Use a blow dryer to help evaporate the turpentine faster. Once it was dry or almost dry, I started cleaning using some thinner, like turpentine in this case. I use a soft cloth that doesn't leave shag or any rubbish behind. When cleaning, I have to decide how the tones are turning up and how much cleaning does any specific area needs. The second wash I applied was with black. This time I used a smaller flat brush as I wanted to highlight some of the detail inside the scars, the seams and the boots. After that, I used a cotton swab with turpentine to clean the excess paint and soften the borders on these areas. Another very handy effect I applied was to dry brush some water-based acrylic paint. Dry brush is actually used with lighter tones of color to highlight some raised surface details. I have to get rid of most of the brush paint, leaving just a little to be applied with a light touch, similar to dusting off the figure. For the helmet, I started by creating the used scratch details over the red paint, leaving visible the chrome color beneath it. Remember, this paint leaves a smooth surface, so it is not hard to remove the red paint. I used a combination of masking tape or any other adhesive tape and some tools such as files or wire brushes to create the scraps and scratches. This effect should be more visible at the figure angles and edges, as normal wearing works like this. Then I applied a black wash over the red to contrast the texture further. Washes usually help to hide some of the previous work, in this case the scratches I did before. Remember, you can always return and scrape the pieces again some more if necessary. The second wash was an India red applied over the bulge, the creases and details, marking the most relevant areas. This effect gives it a more lively and bloody aspect to the head. Then I proceeded to clean both washes. I started with the red first, trying to be careful not to extend the color to the rest of the helmet. In case it is still fresh, you can use the blow dryer to hurry up the cleaning. Then I continued with the dark wash of the helmet, leaving the details in the deeper bits of the texture and being careful not to erase the other paintwork I have done before. Just as with the body, I used some dry brushing with a bright red to highlight the helmet texture. You should take notice that the very last paint effect you use will be more visible, but any good paintwork should mix all effects accordingly. I also applied some of the scratching and scraping effects to the spear. As with the helmet, I used a fine wire brush and a file, trying not to exaggerate this pattern too much. I added the black oil wash to the spearhead. Then I cleaned it with a cloth and applied some India red to the handle to give a bloody feel to it. Very suitable for these resin kits. The final step for the spear was a 3-step oxidation effect. I started with the darkest tone, using a burnt umber acrylic. I applied with a synthetic sponge, and the pattern should cover most of the handle and some of the spearhead. The second color I used was burnt sienna, which is a medium reddish brown. When applied, I selected some areas to concentrate the color pattern over the previous darker paint, without losing it completely. The last step was to apply natural sienna, which is a yellowish brown. This color should be applied even less so than the previous brown, and just to highlight some specific areas. If you feel that you have way too much of these three paints, you can always go back and paint over until you find a nice balance between them. I have applied all the painting effects now, but I am still missing some details. I used some chrome paint to do the flesh staples present in the figure arms and clothing. I also decided to reapply a bit more of the India red into the scars and wounds. The good thing about all these brush effects is that we can go back and try bringing some tone or color up by using dry brush, glazes or washing until we are satisfied with the results. The final step for the body was to add some glossy transparent varnish to the flesh, wounds and scars of the figure to give them more life with actual lighting. The contrast between matte and glossy finishings is very important, and in my opinion they make a lot of difference between a professional and an amateur result. Also remember to seal off your work with transparent coats in between airbrush and some brush effects. This helps give some resistance to the paint when handling or masking the parts of the kit. The last step of the helmet was also to apply the glossy varnish to the bulge beneath the head. Once it has dried, I assembled all the parts, just as I tested them at first. If there might be some problem with the fitting or angles of the nails, you can use a set of pliers to correct them. You should also be very careful not to damage the painting when gluing the parts. Use as little glue as possible because it may overflow and ruin some of the work. Now I will leave you with a turnaround video of the final model. Enjoy! Thanks for your time and attention. If you have any doubt, please leave your comments, like this video and subscribe to our channel. I'll see you in the next video.